Good morning, good afternoon, or good night if you're Sam in New Zealand. We have a great panel today, and we're focusing on one of the most fascinating topics for me, at least. What's happening in China sports? What are the opportunities? What are the challenges? And specifically focusing on sports tech. We have with us great panelists today with tons of insights, and we want to touch really the interesting points, the ones that are are relevant for the sports world. In terms of all the topics that are of an interest to us when we're looking to penetrate China with new technologies, with new sport applications. And what is the current situation in China in terms of sports and sports tech? And also, what about technologies going out of China as well? Investments, all the, I would say, regulations, government, anything that, we ask ourselves with regards to operating and collaborating with China, but specifically now, post the Corona, and one thing that is a bit, came to my mind when I was preparing to this webinar is China was the first to, when the COVID-19 started, but it was the first to recover, and life more or less came back, and we all learned from China what the best way to do it. But sports-wise, I'm speaking from Tel Aviv. One of our best players is playing in the Super League in China. Yeah, Eran Zehavi. He was the top scorer for I think for 2 years now in a row. He's not playing. So the Bundesliga started, Premier League is starting. So what's happening in China in terms of sports? And I want to start. We have really great panel today. Not enough time to hear all your insights, but let's give it a go. I'll start with Marcus. Marcus, each one of you, if you're going to meet initially, just present yourself briefly. And then, Marcus, I'm throwing this at you. What's your thoughts on that? Why sports is not happening in China? And what's your view now at the new reality around China and China sports?
Sure. Quick introduction. My name is Marcus Luhr. I'm the founder and group CEO of Total Sports Asia. We're one of the leading sports marketing agencies in this part of the world. I've been doing this for about 25 years. So I've seen lots of interesting things happening in this part of the world. We've had an office in China for many years. So coming back to your question, what's happening in China? I think a couple of things. One is you obviously have an industry which is still highly regulated by the government, which means it's not even though the federations and leagues and clubs are becoming more and more independent in some sense and maybe more professional, but the government clearly has still an extremely large say in the overall operation of things. So I think that's always important to understand, and that's a big difference, of course, to many of the Western markets. So therefore, anything what they'll do has to be linked to what the government's, at the end of the day, idea as well as direction is. Now, I've actually checked with someone who works directly in the CSL earlier, and they're planning to go back live on, he mentioned, middle of July. So they're not far off, which is good news, I guess. I'm not so sure about some of the other leagues, but this particular one looks like they're around the corner, and maybe Sam or others might have some more insights. The other thing to maybe look at when we're starting this conversation is that, again, we have still a sports industry which is clearly, in terms of professionalism, quite a few years behind the Western markets, just because it's newer, fresher, right? At the same time, you have since we're talking about technology here, you have, of course, huge technology companies, Tencent, Baidu, Alibaba, Sina, etc., who are in some cases way ahead of the Western world. Right? So we have an interesting paradox here, I think, that on one side you have an industry which lacks probably still some of the firepower of what the big Western leagues and brands have, versus, of course, you have the opposite in the tech world. So that's hopefully something we can explore a bit, and how China will catch up very quickly, I'm sure.
Excellent opening. Thank you, Marcos, for this quick overview. And you mentioned Sina Sport, and we are privileged today to have Sam with us. And I'll come back to you in a second, Sam. But I want to speak to Mike. Mike Young is our Hype's partner in China, and I would say an expert and many years in the industry. And I asked you, Mike, also if you can share a little bit of overview in terms of what's happening now in China in terms of regulation, investment. And I think for that, we can also share a screen as well with a slide or two.
Sure. Hi, sports friends from all over the world. Greetings from Beijing. This is Mike Yan. A brief intro. I'm a serial entrepreneur in sports industry for last 16 years, and I created a company project in both USA and China. And I also done some work for UC Berkeley, Nike Innovation Kitchen, and also Leaning North America. It's a wonderful pleasure and honor to be here on Hype's platform to meet everybody. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. And I would love to share a little bit of an overview of China's sports industry. Basically, just maybe many of you have already know that China in 2014, the State Council make sports industry a national strategy. It's becoming, after that, the number 46 file release. China's, many people call that the first year of China's sports industry. And everything just grows so fast after that. For example, in 2015, the GDP of sports industry was 1.4, and in the last 5 years, it doubled to 3 trillion RMB as of today. And future looks even more brighter. The goal by 2025 is to become 5 trillion, but from the statistic collected from every province lately, it's possible to exceed 6 trillion and 7 trillion. So it really presents a great opportunity for all of us that love sports in every sector. So that's the first point I want to make. And just the next slide, please. Okay, cool. In the last 5 years, just 2 numbers, I think it's quite already tell the picture. In the whole Asia, relating to our topic today, sports tech investment in China accounted for a total 86% of the whole Asia's investment. So, and where I am today, Beijing accounted for 34.5 alone. So I think that for me, that's quite amazing. And I think the trend will continue. And the next, please. Okay, this is a simple chart. Again, China, in terms of the funding in the top 10 cities in Asia, China alone already got 4, and that it's the top 4. So I just want to, I come back from US in 2011, and I just want to say I feel very blessed that witnessed the whole growth of China, and I think the next 5 years will be even more explosive with Olympic coming, Winter Olympic in 2022, and many other major events happening. Thank you.
Excellent. Mike, thank you very much for that. And Hype took a decision, strategic decision to put resources and to focus on Chinese market. And I think to see the numbers, we know the industry is in great growth, but to see the numbers, in all the aspects, focus on also on sports and sports tech, is quite unique and quite rare. And thank you for sharing that. We'll come back to you later on, because there are a lot of challenges about regulations and other stuff that I want to hear from you. Sam.
Yeah, my honor to be your partner in China.
Thanks. Sam, thanks for staying so late. It's what now, 12 o'clock at night?
Yeah, just past midnight here in New Zealand.
Past midnight so you're outside of China now, but we want to hear the secrets about China. What's happening now in terms of sports? What's your insights on how China passed the COVID crisis from your angle in terms of sport and broadcasting, and what is the current situation now, obviously from your perspective, and if you can introduce your role within Sina Sports as well and your background.
Of course. Hi, everyone. So I'm with Sina Sports. We actually have a few different business lines, and they've been affected differently. So we have Sina Sports, which is a website. It's a digital website that's been around for 20 years. We broadcast different rights from around the world. So obviously with the cancellation, we have had quite a bit of affections when it comes to some of the rights. So obviously we do a lot in golf. So the Masters was canceled. The European Tour has been delayed, so that affects us to a certain degree. And then we also own Weibo, which is the biggest open social media platform in China. And there actually during the virus, when everyone was staying at home in China, we saw a pretty large spike, just as most of the other digital media or social media platform had. And so I think it was like up 30% in terms of users during that period, as everyone flocked to the social media websites to learn more about the virus and also to socialize with all of the people. And then our third line of business is an offline events business. So we have the world's largest 3-on-3 basketball tournament. We also have a futsal tournament, and then we also have a very large alpine skiing contest that unfortunately was cut short. So the alpine skiing is also in conjunction with the Winter Olympics coming to Beijing in 2022. And that one is, we're endorsed by the International Ski Federation. And for that one, our season was cut short. We were supposed to reach over 100 ski resorts this season, but unfortunately halfway through, we had to shut everything down. So that has definitely been affected as well. But that on the offline events part, just as Marcus mentioned earlier, all of the major leagues and the minor leagues, including us, we're all coming back. We're currently scheduled for a late June launch for the 3-on-3 basketball tournament. We actually hosted a few pilots, with the agreement from the local governments. So we've done some small tournaments around China. So that one, last year we did over 185 cities, but this year, because it will be shortened by a couple months, so we're looking to do at least 100 cities. This is still being determined. One of the things that I think is worth noting is as China gets past the virus, there's a lot of work that's done behind the scenes by the local sports bureaus, by the local government, to really kind of facilitate the leagues and all of the companies in order for everyone to come back safely. I think that's a point that Mike and Michael can probably relate to very, very well with their ventures as well, that, it's really been a lot of very cautious but very strenuous effort to get everybody back on the same page. I just want to add, Amir, that on the sports tech side, so one of my passions, and I've been a mentor with Hype, and also I'm an advisor for several portfolio companies as well. It's been a really, really interesting ride. And actually, I just heard one of my portfolio companies that will be part of the new Hype Virtual Accelerator. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Sam, for those initial insights. We'll come back to you later on, but we are certainly great to have you as a partner of the Global Virtual Accelerator we've just launched. I know that you are really actively looking for great technologies, great solutions. And we hope that, we had over 1,000 startups applying for this accelerator. So I hope that through the screening we've done, you will find some interesting stuff that could be of an interest to Sina Sports and your activities, whether in China or overseas. So great for that, thank you. And I want to come to Alberto, Italian living in China. That's always interesting. Alberto, on our previous conversation, preparing for this call, you reminded me of myself in a sense, that when I come to a startup and they start explaining to me about how they build branding and positioning and loyalty, I always ask them, where is the money? Where is the monetization? Yeah. Otherwise, you can talk about branding for a few weeks, but you're not going to stay around if you're not going to take care of monetization. And you mentioned that there is a nice way of looking at the different cultures, where in China they are very focused on the bottom line, on monetization and making sure business is sound. And if you compare it to the Western world, maybe to Europe, there is more focus on branding, positioning, and long-term loyalty. Can you share with us a little bit of your insights and also introduce yourself and what are you doing in China?
Sure. Thank you for the introduction. I hope I don't remind you also because of the hairstyle. I'm losing some of them after being here. But yeah, nice to meet you, everybody. As Amir said, I've been living in Shanghai for 8 years now. I was with Inter Milan before, and now with the EA Sports as the Chinese Super League managing editor. And a great introduction by Marcus. I'm completely on the same page about the government influence on the football environment here in China. And I would like to connect this to the monetization that you just mentioned, Amir. So basically now we are at the point in China where the football clubs from Europe that are trying to penetrate the market are finding a kind of gate at the entrance of China, where you cannot just get inside and looking for followers on your social media channels or on your Weibo, on your WeChat, but you actually have to, face the monetization issue. And that is true, for example, for Tottenham Football Club. So I was speaking with the people that handled Tottenham here in China, and Tottenham took 7.5 years to start seeing profits here in China. So that's quite a number of years compared, for example, to European market. So this is just a reference number. I think Tottenham could have been somebody else. Just to say that China is trying to build through the technological, sports technological transformation, a business model for the clubs where they come to China with a clear business plan that involves activations, involves fans engagement, and building some values that fans could share and wake up in the middle of the night to see the Tottenham football team and then buy their own merchandising. And that's true for any other European club. So monetization, not for the short term, but with a long-term vision. And that's hopefully what the Chinese football club should also insist on. But for the issue that Marcus mentioned before, and maybe we can tackle it later, with such quite still relevant government influence, we will see it will take maybe a number of years more.
Got it. Michael Soon, you had the courage to, among other things that you're doing, to bring a new sport to China. Sounds like, wow, mission impossible. Tell us a little bit about that and, what's happening now around that.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity, to be here, and then, of course, a lot of these old friends that I've known for a long time in the industries. Just a little bit about myself. I've been in China for 20 years now. I started out, coming back to Asia, as a venture capitalist, doing some investment, that was still the kind of the very end of the internet era, the internet boom, so to speak. And after the boom, obviously, that was kind of a sign of, okay, you might want to do something else. So, and then Beijing won the hosting right of the Olympics. So, and that was kind of the time that I started and joined, joined the sports industry. I started out with IMG, where I was the head of the Olympic consulting division. Later on, I was promoted to the managing director of China, whereas I was the co-founder of the joint venture between IMG and CCTV. So among other things, but throughout the whole process of at the IMG, I came in contact with what actually turns out to be my greatest love. Okay, my wife is not around, but slam ball, right? Slam ball started out back in the US, and it was merged by IMG in 2007. And I was actually one of the few guys that saw something in it. And just like what you said, why?
Sorry, Michael, when you say slam ball, not everybody understands what it is. So this
Correct,
is all those trampolines that you are around, and you can slam the ball properly, as we all dreamt as kids. Yeah.
Correct. It's what we call the kind of like a sport where we literally took, on the foundation of basketball, we blended, gymnastics, football. It's a full contact sport, by which means, being in China, literally, it started out as more of a television program. And that was back in the days in the US. And we knew it is a very exciting, a kind of a cool product that we would present in China. But then, as a way to promote the sport, we literally had to go back to the drawing table and literally write everything done and put the whole infrastructure in place. So we've done this for the last 8 years. And where we're at today is that I think, there was a couple of breakthroughs that we have. We started out in college, so now we're in 40 colleges, and we have four major universities where we have actually our own slam ball training centers there, where slam ball is part of their physical education curriculums.
Yeah.
And another big breakthrough was since 2018. We now are officially recognized by the Chinese government. We're now part of the China Extreme Sports Federation, where we are hoping, this year, fingers crossed, if everything goes well, we're going to be inducted to the China National Games. So, which means, for those for the audience out there, China National Games is what we call as well as the Olympics of China. It's highly competitive. It's represented by all the provinces, cities. So
it's a yearly or how often is it?
Every 4 years.
Every 4 years.
Yes. Okay. The very next one is going to be in next year, 2021. So we're doing our best, and it's been an uphill battle, especially even now. I mean, it was the pandemic. Obviously, it's not helping. We had to stop a lot of our activities, both in school as well as in the market-wise. We have about 10 entertainment centers all around China, and we'll actually come out with more new concept of how to help slam ball to monetize it. So all in all, in a nutshell, it has been a great experience, but certainly it's not the easiest thing ever. So it's still uphill battles, and we're hoping for the best. And I'm making this as sort of my lifetime project, so to speak.
Okay. So if somebody is considering to bring a new sport to China, I should probably give you a call to save a little bit of some of the hustle that is but probably it's still going to be a nice journey. I want to come back to, thank you for this, Michael. We'll come back to you. I want to ask Marcus. Marcus, in our previous conversation, you said that overall, with your 25 years working in Asia, the Western technologies have no chance competing with Chinese technology. Yeah. So, you know, we like controversial, you know, statements here. You know, our crowd is based on the industry of sport tech, the community of startups and investors and brands. What do you mean by that in terms of technology? So does it mean that if I have a great technology, I should never try to penetrate China? You know, what are you saying to the startups now that have a dream to penetrate China and sell their great products to Sam and to his team? You're on mute.
Let me frame what what you just said, or clarify some of the points. I think there are two things. One is, again, I'm not saying anything new to anyone who knows China well, that the tech ecosystem is a very different system than in the Western world, right? The equivalent of Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all this stuff exists in that part of the world, and Sam and others can talk about this better than I can. So it is a bit more of, I would say, a closed system, where we all know certain platforms in the Western world are not even reach China, right? So that is probably where I'm coming from, that any Western platform which is based on Android or other platforms here will have a hard time penetrating the market, just because these I guess the Chinese walls which are there in the true sense of the word, number one, and number two, because technology in many ways is already way ahead of the Western world when you look at what WeChat and Tencent and others are produced and built there. So I think that's, you know, I'll throw it back to Alberto there later, because I know he had a good example where it's not necessarily true. And as usual, as I think I said as well, of course there are always going to be the exception to the rule, but I think in the larger scheme of things, adopting Western technology into China, it's the same way of adopting Western cultures into China is not easy, right? And the harder part is even how to monetize it, right? So, you know, it took me probably 10 years before we were starting making money in China. So yes, it is a long road. So in many ways.
That's a big statement. You know, if we were producing headlines, you're saying that adopting new technology in China is compared to adopting a Western culture in China. Ooh, okay. You refer to Alberto. Maybe Alberto, you would like to jump in.
Yeah, it could link directly to what Marcus is saying, or also what Mike shared before, talking about the 3 billion in the industry. Like, if we start to consider esports as part of the sports environment in China, then those numbers, those 3 billion is nothing. It's not even relevant, because it's going to be double than that. And esports in the Western world is still something I'm thinking about, you know, like Epic Games or Riot Games, and then of course it became Chinese one, Chinese owned. But esports is a branch of the field where actually Western technology could still have some great opportunities here. I'm also talking about EA Sports, obviously, with you know, a game content that could not be easily replicated maybe in China, and that could fascinate the gamers community, so the famous millennials or Generation Z. So I think esports is one of the fields. And as we were discussing with Marcus yesterday, yeah, even in the data analysis for football, because at the moment, all the major players in the world are either from Russia or from United States or even Italy. So data analysis in football is something that fascinates the Chinese people, the Chinese consumers. It could be applied into betting, which is a real big thing here, betting in sports. And, you know, with as Michael mentioned, with the 2021 China Games and 2022, we will have Asian Games, possibly with the esports competition inside. We will have the Beijing Winter Olympic Games. So I believe for startups doing data analysis or esports, there could be some potential in the next 2 or 3 years in China, yeah.
Thank you for this insight, Alberto. I want, you know, if you're on, you know, you are e-sport expert, yeah? Now, a few months ago, while meeting investors in London, almost every investor I met, the first question was, can I invest in esports? Can you give us like 1 minute overview on the status of esports in China?
So esports in China at the moment is a big thing for European football clubs. For instance, I'm consulting for an esports agency called Bundle, which we take care about the rights of Wolverhampton Football Club, which is owned by Fosun, which is one of the biggest companies in China, obviously. And Fosun has their own division for esports. Wolverhampton has created their own esports club, because esports at the moment is the bridge for the newer generation of Chinese people, Chinese consumers, with European entities. Could be football clubs, could be federations, could be brands. Why that? Because there is a huge generational gap in China between the people passionate for sports, live sports, until when there was a lift on console ban and video games ban back in 2011. So that was the time that the new generation filled this gap with the esports as an entertainment. So they didn't grow up as passionate football fans, for instance, but they start the new generation with directly exactly what you're showing there, right there. Live events, and Chinese team in esports are dominant. They won the Asian Games back in 2017 in Jakarta. So they are at the moment the Asian champion in esports, talking about LOL, Dota 2. So I think esports now is the business card for foreign enterprises to enter China and directly communicate with the younger generation.
Okay, sorry to put the spotlight on you, but this is fascinating in terms of esports. I know a lot of our audience are interested in that. Now, first of all, you know, we have an accelerator in the Bundesliga with FC Köln. Every team in the Bundesliga has a esports strategy, and usually either a team or a team they support. Is that the same with the two questions? A, is that the same with the Super League, let's say in China? And secondly, if I'm Inter Milano, which I understand you're a fan as well, state fan, yeah? Do I buy in order to tap into the young generation in China? Is your recommendation I own an esport team in China? Two small questions, if you can answer briefly.
Good question, to be honest, for the number one especially, because I don't think at the moment the governance in the Chinese football league is going in the direction of implementing esports for the Chinese clubs. So it's a government, it's a governance issue, the Chinese Football Association wise. It's not the right timing yet. For Inter Milan, I would definitely say yes, there is an esports team already. They're owned by Suning. So obviously it will be very easy to be implemented in China. And the thing we need to remember is, though, from the club perspective, and here I conclude my intervention, there will not be much possibility of getting raw data from the engagement with those fans. Because differently as it happens worldwide, when you have an esports platform in China, you need local servers. So Tencent, for instance, running the servers and the data of the accounts. Even Hearthstone, for instance, one of the most popular game of Blizzard, has their own Chinese server and international server. So if a club is coming here thinking, okay, I'm gonna get tons of raw data about, you know, consumer behavior and background of my fans, actually it will be filtered by a local company. I think Sam could maybe share his opinion on this, but this is the system here.
Excellent. Thank you, Alberto. Before we go to Sam, I want perhaps to ask Mike, you know, Alberto was talking about regulations and, you know, with the government, I would say, guidelines in terms of esport getting to the Super League and in general. Can you share a little bit about your, you know, I know you're working with startups and companies which are would like to penetrate China. Can you share some of the insights, you know, like very simple do's and don'ts for companies, you know, wants to penetrate China? You know, everybody says to us, don't go there on your own. You need to have a great local partner. But, you know, can you like open our eyes a little bit on that? And we focus on investment aspects and regulations.
Great. Is my mic on? Okay. Yeah, great questions. I think first of all, I want to say in my personal experience and opinion that China's sports industry is very open and very friendly. Well, just give my personal project. In 2011, I brought Nike Sports Camp, which is one of the biggest sports training company and brand in the world, to China. And instantly I get a lot of calls and also interested to learn more about the content, what can we do in China. At a certain point, I was traveling in 18 provinces, meeting all the partners. And another evidence that I want to mention, that Chinese government really welcome global and international exchanges and collaboration. Just last year alone, 2019, the budget for global in collaboration and exchange is 442 million from the general admin of sports. So all these, I think, overall, I would say it's a really rich soil. Obviously, it doesn't. At the same time, it has a lot of challenges as well. I think the biggest challenge is coming from true and deep understanding of many aspects of China. Many areas are very different: culture, system, society, market needs, consumer habit, how things work and gets done. That's why I feel for any Western company that want to not missing the big growth of China market, it would be, I have 3 suggestions. I think, first of all, education and really true understanding of how China is today is very important, and constant visit or immerse in the environment, and also read a lot of articles, not just I think global articles, both Chinese medias and Western medias. For example, like China Daily has a lot of great articles daily on sports and its policy. And the second suggestion is, like you mentioned, Amir, I think a local partner will save a lot of time, energy, and money, and obviously need a lot of work to find a right partner, reliable and also resourceful, and also best to have track record of bringing Western company into China's market. And I think if that can be done, not only time, energy, and money, but a lot of sleepless nights can be saved. The third one and the last one is, I think it's very important to stay open-minded, and willing to make adaptations to China's need, because again, every aspect is different. It's a lot of things that work in Western or might not necessarily work in China. So it's important to stay flexible, open-minded, and make it China suitable. That's all.
Great, thank you for this 3, I would say, bullets. And I think first of all, the session is also now live on LinkedIn and Facebook, but it's also going to be shared on the Hype ecosystem. So if people missed some of the points that Mike mentioned or any other points, you can go back to that. Sam, I want to hear your feedback on the stuff that was thrown in. I'm sure you have some. And also I want to start doing like ask each one of you about what do you think is the major challenge now facing people looking to penetrate China in the sports universe. What is the major challenge that is now they need to take into account? Please, Sam.
Yeah, I think Mike and Alberto both mentioned a little bit in terms of the challenges having local partnership or local folks on the ground is very important. Understanding the ecosystem, understanding how it's differentiated from the Western system is very important. I think one thing to kind of just be very realistic is that the sports industry in China is still in its infancy, and the sports tech especially is probably even more so. Looking at the chart that Mike put up earlier about the $3 billion investment, well, actually out of that $3 billion, $1 billion of it went to a company that is no longer in existence, right? And that's Love Sports. So I think that's a very good example of what could possibly go wrong. I think that's a very good example of where things stand in the sense that there are a lot of people who are kind of, as any developing industry. I mean, I think there are companies that are kind of looking at very short-term views. And Mark is taking a long-term view of being in China for 10 years and making a profit. I mean, I think that's the right way to go. So I would suggest that, one of the biggest challenges is to not really see it as a place where you can come in very easily and make a quick buck and leave. I think that's probably true for a lot of the federations and teams, but I think for startups as well, that it really is a very different and complex ecosystem that you need to put in the effort in order to have success. I would say that's probably the biggest one.
Yeah, sorry, Sam, would you agree with what Marcus said earlier, that for Chinese companies will prefer Chinese technologies on Chinese? And I'm asking this also with Accelerate in the background. What will be the technologies that you believe CNA Sports would look for overall? What's your focus?
Yeah, I think Marcus is right. I think this kind of goes back into the history of the biggest companies here in China versus the biggest companies outside of China, because in the sports system in the West, you have a lot of traditional broadcasting companies. You have a lot of rights holders that have been around for a very long time, and so a lot of the new technologies are ones where they're not quite able to develop in-house because they don't have that capability. Whereas where some of the biggest players in China are internet players, right? So they do have the technical capabilities to develop certain things in-house. Us and everybody else, and Tencent and all those guys, when there is technology to be adopted, I think a lot of times they look to in-house solutions first. And for us, I think a good example is with our offline events. And obviously, when we are building our own events from scratch, there's a lot of need for different types of technology. But in a lot of ways, we're not really looking for vendors to provide those types of technology, whereas we're a lot of times are looking for OEM solutions, white label solutions, or just kind of adopting that technology ourselves in order to have that technology or a version of it or a solution of it. So I think that's Marcus is pretty correct in that aspect. But I would think that there's still opportunities, for different types of startups to come into the market. I think Alberto is absolutely right that esports is a very, very big one. We actually have a few different types of initiatives in the esports ecosystem. I mean, obviously Weibo being the social media platform where a lot of people go. Alberto mentioned the wins, at the Asia Games, the wins at LOL and in different events, that the fans come to social media, come to Weibo to celebrate these wins. So there's a lot that we're doing on that front. And also I think because the esports system is even newer than everything else, that at this point, I think the Chinese corporations and the industry is much more open to new innovations, just because they want to catch up very quickly, and a lot of times it's easier to just bring in the tech.
Amir, can I jump in for a second here, just
Please,
to,
Mark.
maybe to add something? We did some research a couple of years ago, and we were looking at building some of our own technology in OTT and other places. And let's say the equivalent Western company might have, I don't know, 500 engineers and programmers, and the Chinese version of that would be 5,000. Okay, so if you have 10 times the firepower, you know, it's a simple math, right? The speed and how they're going to be doing things is so different. And that's actually, I think anyone who's never really done work in China, one thing you'll be surprised is the absolute speed how things work in China versus the Western world. You know, we are all half asleep in the rest of the world versus how fast China operates is my view. So that's the challenge for anyone, right? So I'm not saying that there isn't Western technology, which is, I won't say better is maybe the wrong word, but is adaptable enough to China, and especially in specialist areas like maybe training systems or other stuff, where clearly, again, if you look at training systems in the Western world, it's football or sports like that, I think everyone can learn from it, no doubt, and so does China, and I think China is always open for that. But when it comes to other things, I think it's very difficult to beat the market just because of the scale and the speed and the resources on the ground.
Yeah,
So,
that's fascinating. I want to share with you two quick stories. First one is visiting one of the top sportswear brands in the world. I will give a hint, it's in Europe. 3-4 years ago, we went and we did like a tour around, and the guy who was hosting us told us, you know, you see this big building, all the smartest innovators in the world are there. And when we said, okay, would you like us to bring some startups that will solve the problems you're facing? The answer was very polite, but you know, we have the best innovators in-house. About 3 or 4 years later, suddenly there is a change of views, and we've done a project together introducing startups from all over the world to solve those problems. First story. Second story, one of the biggest companies in the world got an assignment to create a solution for hockey, yeah, to put like a goal line technology. They took 2 floors in their big offices, and after a year, there was a product. It was $1 million. Yeah, maybe the numbers are not accurate as they are, but overall, so you get the idea. $1 million per goal. Another startup created another solution, and the price of the solution was tenth of the price that they offered. Because they are startups, because they're lean, because this is the culture of a startup. Now, what I'm saying from my head as an entrepreneur, yeah, and I'm asking, there is a culture of understanding how to work with startups and taking them and embracing them and using their technology, or we are still saying, okay, let's our big companies, you know, see what's good and develop it internally. Yeah, maybe Sam, I'm coming back to you for another round.
Yeah, I think there is. I think there is definitely that understanding, you know, for startups, for these types of technologies. It's really about the fit and the need. I think if, you know, and again, that goes back to understanding the ecosystem, understanding the companies, where there's a need. I don't see any hesitation in working with the startups. But it needs to be the right fit. I think that's probably a better answer. For example, so with our offline events, we've been looking at facial recognition technology, so that the players, because ours is a grassroots event, so we have over 200,000 players. What we wanted was for the players to be able to immediately find their highlights after they play, then taking that and then posting it onto Weibo so they can share it with their friends. So we're looking for a piece of technology like that. And we found a couple companies in China that provided the camera, provided the tech, and we work with them, to work out, to figure out which one was the better solution. And in the end, we picked one to be our partner. But that's because we really had a pretty strong need for something like that. And so, yeah, so I wouldn't, and then both of us actually pitched us at around the same time. So I think also it's about, kind of doing the BD and doing the work, right? I think for us, we may not be out there looking at technology all the time to see if it's a good fit, especially if it's a Western technology, to see if then we need to bring it in, we need to make sure it's localized and all of that. But I don't see any sort of hesitation to work with startups.
Yeah. Excellent. Look, the so many topics, and this first webinar on China for us, it's I would say just to stimulate the mind and to raise more topics and more questions for another one. And I want to go to you, Michael. Michael, let's speak about the future a little bit. Yeah, let's be futuristics. If you look at 5 years time from now, yeah. What do you see happening in China? What do you see the trends? Where should we focus on? What's your thoughts if you like, if I want to be 5 years from now in China, in the sports universe?
Mm-hmm. Well, China, it's now basically everywhere. I mean, it's very important for China to be on the map today. And, needless to say, we are. So, a lot of researchers are predicting, as they're saying, the next 10 years is what we call the golden age or the golden time for China brand. So one of the important thing here is that it's for China. A lot of these bigger companies out there, or at least these brand, they want to become global. Okay, so it's definitely a fact. And so back to your question, what we're saying here, one of the few things that's out there in the news every day is is the 5G technology, right? So the 5G technology, China is in a certain way, is ahead of most of other countries, and also China is implementing in China itself, right? So 5G technology obviously provides a whole new world of different opportunities, and that's going to be enormous. And basically, the way I would see it, in sports, having 5G, think about the broadcasting, the media, the esports, even the traditional sports, it's going to turn the whole thing upside down, and which means there's a new opportunity. And what I'm trying to say here to our audience, the startups, that might be definitely a direction to go, because there's a lot of need. What I call it, the road is there. Now, what are we going to play there? What are we going to put in place? And I think China itself, it's also new to all of this and trying to figure it out. And I think in that regard, there is that kind of opportunity for everyone.
I like it. Sam, thank you very much. Michael, thank you very much for that. And 5G, obviously, when you think about 5G, for me, it's first about smart cities, Internet of Things. But I agree, this will impact sports, stadiums, fan engagement, esport dramatically. Alberto,
right.
What about your predictions about 5-10 years from now in China?
Yeah, I completely agree with Michael about the technology. Said that's not a concern, but what Marcus said earlier is so true. Like, the speed of things here is really fast. So that means that people have not that much time to dedicate to entertainment. And I think we all agree that sports basically is an entertainment for the population. So what we really need to identify, and talking to the audience here, to engage the Chinese market is to make their time available to pay attention to your content. Because in a booming economy, there are so many possibilities for them to use their free time, which is very limited compared to the Europeans, for example, or American populations. So I think the challenge here is not about the technology, but it's about the getting to the core and to the top of mind of the consumer. So leave an imprinting from the point of view of the values or the engagement, or sports is emotions, right? So you need to bring up emotion from the people. And that is true not just for the foreign company, but even for the Chinese Super League clubs. To see stadiums half empty in the live games, that's not something nobody wants. And to see there is a new 100,000 seater stadium coming in Guangzhou in the next 3 years. Maybe it could have been a little bit smaller stadium, but with higher ticket pricing, and could bring more revenue to the stadium itself and to the club. So there are different ways to engage fans, but the thing is, back to the basics, is bring out emotion from them and connecting on an emotional level, because sports is passion. So this is for me the strategy that the clubs will adopt in China, because I'm totally confident that we are on the right direction. As Michael and Sam said before, the technology environment here is really like a much more advanced than the Western world. So there are all the right ingredients to make a great recipe. Just the thing is putting them together in the right way and in the right time.
Excellent. And thank you for reminding us that yeah, it's all about the passion for sports. In the end of the day, we are not to care, to focus only on the technology and logistics around that. So yeah, it's all about connecting to the passion and enhancing the experience, yeah, using technology. Sam, your thoughts on the future?
On the future, I mean, I think, like I mentioned earlier, it's very much a developing place, and I see massive growth in both sports industry as well as sports tech. I think sports tech in general globally is going to expand at an exponential growth rate, and I think more so probably for China. Just looking at kind of the different verticals, I would say fan engagement and esports are the two that I really think have very strong growing rates, and also wearables is another one where, in terms of health and fitness, we kind of didn't touch on it. You were mentioning that there's so many things to talk about, but I think health awareness is a very, very big one. We just saw a kind of a new unicorn being formed in that space, with Keep receiving a large investment recently. So I think in that space, they're supposed to be projecting 250 million, which is the size of the US, and that's supposed to be the middle class in China within the next 5 to 10 years. So with that, you're definitely going to see a growth and a focus on wellness and in terms of people's health. And so that, nutritional, physical, mental health. So on all those three aspects, I think you will see a pretty big growth. Mental health is actually one that is somewhat taboo in China, but it's a very much an untapped market. You see so many apps outside of China, but you don't really see that much inside of China. So I think there's a pretty big opportunity there. And then in terms of the health and wellness, I mean, I think that's a massive growth. So I see a lot of potential in quite a few different areas, and I think there will be new companies, new technology, what Michael said about 5G that we don't even know about yet. But I think, just to echo pretty much everyone on this panel, is the fact that China is a complex place, and you really need to. I like the whole recipe is coming from an Italian guy, Alberto. But you really need to have the right solution. You need to have the right mix of people and the technology and the know-how in order to tackle it. But that's true for any market in the world.
Any market, but specifically China. Great, thank you, Sam. Marcus, what's your, give us some bold predictions from where you are.
Sure. Maybe I'll sort of go back to how I started, where I said, the government really dictates in many ways of what's happening. And so what's the government's focus? Very easy, right? It's going to be the Winter Olympics first. So there's a reason why Sam and runs a skiing competition there, because that's what the government wants to focus on. And when we had our podcast, you mentioned having 100 ski resorts across the country. I mean, I think no one in the Western world doesn't even know that you can ski in China, most likely. Never mind that there are 100 resorts out there, right? Why are they doing it? It's because they're hosting the Olympics, and on the back of it, they want to showcase, and they want to bring us, I can't remember the number Sam mentioned at that time, but there were a couple 100 million Chinese into that industry. So is there a massive growth opportunity there? For sure, right? If you are in the ski world, if you are, a producer of ski equipment or technology in that space, huge. What's the other one right after that? Well, obviously, China wants to host the Football World Cup, and they will. It's a matter of time. It's no question about it, whether it's 2030 or 34. I guess it depends on how the rotating system in the world works, but China will host the Football World Cup. So again, this is maybe 10 years out. But to be focused on that industry now, and therefore on the back of it, huge opportunities for clubs, coaching methodologies, and everything in between linked to football. I think you will find a very open ear there from the Chinese government, just because that is a top priority. So those are just two simple ones to look at, and you can figure out the rest from there. You're on mute right now.
Yeah, it's my turn to be on mute. Thank you for this, Marcus. I want to ask Mike for his predictions, and then if you have some kind of final remark before we allow Sam to go to sleep, we will do it. Please, Mike.
Got it. Well, okay. Well, I will quote what President Xi mentioned. China's growth is world's opportunity. And that's not just, I think it applies to every single aspect. Especially, I think for sports industry in China, especially, I predict next 10 years, it will continue to grow at the fastest pace, and with the scale of the country. I think it will definitely be one of the most important market in the world with time. So I think that's my prediction. So I feel what in many areas has great opportunity. Many other fellow panels already mentioned, but for me, I feel sports plus health, plus entertainment, plus service. Business. I am on the ground every day. I see so many opportunity. Let me just quickly give two examples. Right before today's call, I actually get a technology museum that are in construction in Guiyang province, saying they want to have a section for sports technology, and they want to, Amir, that's our conversation later, okay? They want to invite a lot of, sports technology companies and give them a lot of incentive to come in. And another quick one is I just had a meeting, thanks to my partner Kevin. He's also on the call today. That he arranged a meeting with Bird's Nest, which the national stadium. That's going to be the only stadium that hosts two Olympic, the winter and summer. And we saw so many technology already apply. But when we had a meeting with the director, they still want to see more, and that's where it comes back to, I think, what Amir and we are doing. Very excited to share that we will continue to come up with more programs. So for our goal is to be the springboard for entering China market. So anyway, that's my personal view. I do believe China is worth the opportunity, and hopefully we all do it together.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you.
Worthwhile mentioning that in this new global virtual accelerator, we have 5 verticals. One of them is focusing on China, and interesting to see what kind of great technologies, what kind of collaborations what kind of breakthroughs there will be there with to do with impacting the world of sports in China and outside of China. So if anybody wants to say anything to wrap up?
Maybe I'll add just one last thought. Just came up listening to everyone.
Please.
Sorry?
Yeah, please.
No. In one other area which I've seen again, and I'm sure some of the others would seen as well, is obviously the development of sports cities now in China. A lot of developers focusing on developing sports environments, again driven by the government, of course, saying, hey, we want people to exercise, we want to create fun environments, make the cities more lively. Now that's where, again, I think there's a great platforms around the world, whether you could O2 Arena or LA Live or places like this, where you have really truly fully integrated entertainment complexes. And I don't really believe China has quite got that right yet. They're still building plenty of those things, but not all of them necessarily working really at a level where you could argue they are commercially viable. So again, I think there is technologies and Western knowledge there to turn these things into truly what they should be, full-blown entertainment complexes where esports, sports, and other entertainment all comes together. So I've seen, I think we did some research on it, there were at least 20 live projects going on around China. So I think there is massive opportunities in these type of areas. So as I said, but the key is to know them, and of course, I know about them. And then as companies, you can go after that.
Excellent. Anybody else?
Well,
okay.
If I may.
Yes, please.
Yes. So, yeah, just kind of adding to everyone what they said earlier. Actually, there's another, I would say, a great opportunity that's out there in terms of the China sports development. In terms of that, everyone pretty much knows that, China sports, it's pretty much all in the hands of the government. And even though, there's a big support behind it, but there's also, a certain sense of the, the very basics, the foundation that's not there. Now, in the last year, I would say there is a kind of like a flexibility now that there is a sense of that all the sports federations starting, well, some of them started earlier, but most of them will start next year, is going to privatize. What that means actually is that, well, literally, if you are, say, in my case, I've advised, the China Tennis Association, as well as the Tennis Handball Associations, as well as the Extreme Sports Association. Well, what that means is that for China is that they own that sport, so to speak. So they'll be able to dictate what's going to happen. So in that sense, it is going to be a lot of opportunities out there for companies to get involved. Previously, they could only get involved as more so their service provider. Now you probably could own a piece. So that it's something that what I would like to share with everyone. Excellent. It's there, and timing is right now.
Yeah, timing is right now, and I will take a quote from what you said earlier, Michael, that the next 10 years are the golden age. Let this be the golden age of sports, the golden age of sports tech in China and beyond.
Okay.
I want to thank
we can all agree on that.
Marcus, Alberto, Sam, go to sleep. Have a great night. Mike, all of you. Great session, and looking forward to see you again in any kind of the hype activities and big part of the hype family. Bye for now.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.